I wanted to personally thank you for getting started with this course because owning a food business is a lot of fun and it's very exciting. Not only can it provide an excellent income for you and your family, you get to do a lot of really cool stuff too. And when you own your own food business, you have to get used to people coming up to you and telling you how much they like your recipes. We meet our customers either at food shows or street fairs or when they come into our retail store. In addition, we have a lot of customers calling us up over the phone to place their orders, and they tell us all kinds of stories. And just the other day, one of our customers called us up and wanted us to send some salsa to her daughter's dorm room because a few weeks ago, her daughter and a few of her daughter's friends were back home from college for the weekend. And during their stay, her daughter and her daughter's friends tried our salsa for the very first time, and they couldn't believe how good it was. And now that her daughter is back in college, our customer called us up and we're sending an entire case of salsa to her daughter's dorm room. Now that's pretty cool. And when you own a food business, you get to do a lot of cool things too. One of those is entering into food competitions, because what other industry has industry-wide competitions for competing companies to send products in to be judged by a panel of independent judges? I can't think of a one. And what's really great about it is, if you don't win in a certain year or at a specific event, you can enter again and again until you do win. And once you win, nobody can take that trophy away from you for the rest of your life. You'll always know that your recipe won an award, and that's a great feeling. Also, you can have your products written up in local, regional, and national publications. For example, our products have been written up in nationally published books by Bottom Line Publications. You can also have your products on the radio and television, in addition to seeing your products on store shelves. And if you're a cottage food business, it's a really great feeling to have people at street fairs and festivals enjoying your recipes right in front of you and then giving you money for several jars of your recipes. You may even get to travel with your food business too. You see, every few years, we are invited out to California during the Emmy Awards to attend a number of events and share our nationally award-winning products with Hollywood elite. And since we're a Michigan-based company, January is a very cold time of year for us in northern Michigan. So going to California during January, it's a great way to get out of the snow. And as a matter of fact, the last time we went to California, my wife and I also brought our children with us. And while we were shopping at one of the local grocery stores, we saw our product on the shelf, which was really cool. And I showed my kids, and they couldn't believe that our product was on a store shelf in California. And as a matter of fact, they still talk about it today, how they saw our product in California on a store shelf that people were buying. So having a food business is really great experience, and that's why I put this course together. I wanted to create this course for those who want to work from home, start a part-time business, or even change careers. And all of the information in this course has been tested and used in our own food business, and I've only included the best of the best. And having a food business is one of the best industries to be in. But before I go much further, I need to include a disclosure. I mean, we're all adults here, but the results that I am sharing about our food business and the information in this course doesn't guarantee that you'll make any money in your food business. Our results are not an indicator of the results that you will achieve. You may lose your money in your food business. Your products may never get onto store shelves. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be upfront, but I needed to mention that disclosure. So if people are raving about your recipes, some have even begged you for your recipes, they've told your friends and families about your product, you'll really enjoy this course. So let's go ahead and get started. The very first decision that you need to make when starting your own food business is, how are your recipes going to be produced? You have several choices of production capability when you're building your food business. So, is your recipe something that you can make in your own home kitchen and sell? Or do you need to use a commercial kitchen to make your recipes? So let's go ahead and learn about the 4 different ways that you can have your recipes produced. And I'm going to go into great detail in each one of these as we go through this course, as well as provide advantages and disadvantages for each. And these 4 different ways to produce your recipe are, number 1, you produce your recipe in your own home kitchen. Number 2, you use a shared kitchen to produce your product. Number 3, you hire a co-packer to produce your recipe for you in their kitchen. Or number 4, you set up your own private, commercially licensed food production facility. You produce your own product in your own home kitchen. For some of you taking this course, due to local laws, producing a commercial recipe in your own home kitchen is allowed. However, for others, it may not be permitted. And even if you are not currently permitted to produce your recipe in your own home kitchen, you still need to understand this option, because food laws are very fluid, which means they're changing very rapidly. So for your specific area, your specific state or region, if it doesn't allow you to create products and sell products in your own home kitchen today, it may be coming in the near future. So that's why you still need to understand this option. And this type of home-based operation is usually referred to as cottage food or artisan food. Usually, cottage food kitchens are unlicensed kitchens that have restrictions on the type of recipes produced, the production capability, maximum annual sales volumes, how the product is distributed, and more. And I'm going to share with you the state of Michigan, where I live, some of our laws. So as you talk with your local health department, you'll have a good understanding of what they're going to be looking for and the questions that they may be asking, and you may need to provide answers for when you contact them to inquire about producing food in your own home kitchen. The state of Michigan, where I live, has enacted a cottage food law for food entrepreneurs. And the following examples and references are specific to the state of Michigan cottage food requirements, but they do vary from state to state and from region to region. But I do want to include them as an overview, and it gives you a good idea of the requirements because it gives you a starting point with the type of requirements and restrictions that are involved with operating a food kitchen. And the following references are specifically for the state of Michigan food law. And this information is not all-inclusive and is not legal or health advice. So you would need to consult your local health department and Department of Ag and Rural Development for a comprehensive cottage food law for your area. So here is a non-comprehensive, brief overview of the state of Michigan cottage food law. What are cottage foods? Cottage foods are referred to as the specific types of foods that you can manufacture in your single home domestic residential kitchen. What does a single home or single family residence include? This is where you live. This includes your home or if you are renting. Thus, an apartment, condominium are all considered a single family domestic residence. However, this definition does not include group homes or communal settings, including sororities or fraternities. What type of cottage foods can I produce in my home? Non-potentially hazardous foods that do not require time and or temperature control for safety. And here's a brief example of some of the types of cottage foods that are allowed to be produced in my home. Breads and cakes, for example, wedding cakes and birthday cakes, jams and jellies that can be stored at room temperature, cookies, dry herbs, dry baking mixes, dry soup mixes, popcorn, cotton candy, chocolate-covered food, which includes pretzels, strawberries, pineapples, Rice Krispie treats, and roasted coffee beans. And here's a brief example of the type of cottage foods that are not allowed to be produced in a home kitchen in the state of Michigan. Fish and fish products, meat and meat products, canned products including salsa, apple butter, pickles, hummus, all beverages including apple cider, salad dressings, pet foods, barbecue sauces, or products made from fresh cut tomatoes or cut melons. Are pet foods included under the cottage food law? The cottage food law applies to human food grade food only. How do I sell my cottage foods? And this is a great question that a lot of people do have, and a lot of the people that I do consult with in our food consulting business, they want to know, once I make the product in my home kitchen, how do I sell it? And the law allows you to sell your cottage foods directly to the consumer at direct-to-consumer venues. This include farmers markets, farm stands, roadside stands, and similar venues. The important thing is you are selling your finished product directly to the consumer. Cottage foods made in the state of Michigan in a home kitchen cannot be sold in the following venues: to a retailer for resale. So if you make a recipe in your own home kitchen, you can't sell it at the local store. You cannot sell to a restaurant for use. You cannot sell to a restaurant for resale. You cannot sell to distributors or brokers for resale, nor can you sell over the internet or by mail order. So basically, if you make a food recipe in your own home kitchen, you have to sell it direct to the customer. That's the best way to remember that. If you make it in your own home kitchen, you have to sell it direct to the customer. Next, why does the cottage food law stop me from selling to a restaurant or grocery store? Since the cottage food kitchen is unlicensed and not inspected, the food handling practices are not inspected and evaluated by a food safety individual. This means the handling practices of the kitchen are not inspected and reviewed, so the final product is not considered an approved source for use in a restaurant or resale in a grocery store. Do I have to put a label on my cottage food? Yes. The law requires you to label your cottage foods. And here's the basic information that must be added to your label. Do I have to put a label on my cottage food? Yes. The law requires you to label your cottage foods. And here's the basic information that must be added to your label. Name and physical address, not a post office box, of the operation. Name of the product. The ingredients of the product in descending order of predominance by weight. In addition, if you're using a prepared item in your recipe, you must list the sub-ingredients on the label as well. For example, if you're using enriched flour, using the term enriched flour by itself is not acceptable. It should say enriched flour, which includes wheat flour, reduced iron, and all the other ingredients that go in to make the prepared item that you're adding to the recipe. Next, your label has to include the net weight or net volume. Next, the allergen labeling as specific as possible according to federal labeling requirements. And the final statement, you must also include the following statement: made in a home kitchen that has not been inspected by the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. This must be on the label. And this statement must be at least the equivalent of an 11-point font, which is about 1/8 inch tall. In addition, the color of this font must provide a clear contrast to the background. So this must be a clear statement. The font must be clear enough so it's a clear contrast to the background of the label. So let's take a look at a completed label example for a home kitchen label that is made in the state of Michigan. One question that I get from my consulting clients is, what does allergen labeling as specified in federal labeling requirements, what does that actually mean? This means you must specifically identify any of your ingredients that are made from specific food groups. These food groups include milk, eggs, wheat, peanuts, soybeans, fish, including shellfish, crab, lobster, or shrimp, and tree nuts, such as almonds, pecans, or walnuts. In addition, if you have an ingredient made with a wheat-based product, you have two options. First, list the allergen in the ingredient list. For example, white bread. This includes whole wheat flour, milk, sugar, water, salt, and yeast. In this example, the statement whole wheat flour meets the requirement of federal law. Next, include an allergen statement such as contains after the ingredient list. For example, for white bread with the following ingredients: whole wheat flour, water, sodium, salt, and yeast. Contains wheat and milk. The contain statement must reflect all the allergens found in the product. And the last thing that you want to have happen is someone that actually gets sick from eating your recipe. Because as a food entrepreneur, it's our responsibility to, number one, adhere to federal food guidelines and food requirements. That's just good business. But number two, you definitely want to make sure that anyone consuming your product knows exactly what is in it. Because more and more allergens are being experienced by people of all ages, and you certainly don't want anyone getting sick. In addition, you certainly don't need a product recall, because if you have an ingredient in your recipe that is not disclosed on your label, you may be required to do a product recall if you are distributed in stores or distributors across the nation. For example, a Michigan-based company had to do a product recall of over 1 million jars of their individual products because they were putting ingredients in their recipe that was not listed on the label. I don't know why they did that. I don't know why they made the decision to do that, but they did do, and they had to do a national recall, which, number one, it's not good for the brand, but more importantly is you don't want to get anybody sick, because as a food entrepreneur, people are going to be consuming your product and they want to know that they can trust 100% in what's on your label. Are there any special requirements for tree nut labelings for allergens? Yes. Your cottage food, if it has tree nuts in the ingredients, you must identify which tree nut you are using. For example, if you made the following product, nut bread, an acceptable ingredient list would be wheat flour, water, almonds, salt, and yeast. But the following would not be acceptable: flour, water, nuts, salt, and yeast. As you can see, you had to specifically identify the type of nut that was used in the recipe. For example, we were using almonds. So now that you've made your recipes in your own home kitchen, you've created all your label requirements, and you're adhering to the label guidelines, the next question is, how much can I sell? So, are there any other limits I need to know about cottage foods? Yes. According to the state of Michigan, if you're a state of Michigan food entrepreneur making it out of your own home kitchen, you can sell up to $15,000 gross annual sales per household. So this means you can sell about $1,200 per month in gross annual sales before you have to get your products made in a fully licensed kitchen. The nice thing about this $15,000 is it allows you to create an income from your business, number one, get a return on your investment, number two, but more importantly, number three, as your business grows, you're going to be producing higher volume of recipes that are going out the door, and number two, you're going to want greater distribution opportunities, selling to restaurants, selling to stores, selling to distributors. So, $15,000 annual gross sale. That's according to the state of Michigan. Again, states do vary with their different laws, so you'll definitely need to contact your local health department to determine how much in gross annual sales you can produce out of your kitchen. Can I make the cottage food products in an outbuilding on my property, like a shed or a barn? No. The law requires the cottage food products to be made in your kitchen and stored in your single-family residence. Approved storage areas include the basement and attached garage of the home where the food is made. Will I need to meet local zoning or other laws? Yes. The cottage food exemption only exempts you from the requirements of licensing and routine inspection by the Michigan Department of Ag. What oversight does the Michigan Department of Agriculture have over my cottage food operation? Cottage food operations are considered to be food establishments, but will not have to meet most requirements outlined in the food law. In all cases, food offered to the public must be safe and unadulterated, regardless of where it is produced. And as a cottage food operator, it's your responsibility to assure the food you make is safe. In the event a complaint is filed or a foodborne illness is linked to your food, the Department of Agriculture will inspect your operations as part of their responsibility under the food law. And as part of that investigation, it may be necessary for the Department of Agriculture to enter and inspect your cottage food production and storage areas, view your copies of your records that you keep, and take photos during the course of a complaint investigation. And the Department of Agriculture also has the right to seize products suspected of being adulterated. They can order any corrections of label violations or require you to discontinue making unapproved products. So in a nutshell, contact your local health department, get a list of the type of foods that can be made and the requirements that are needed to be followed as a cottage food operator. Are there any additional requirements regarding my home's on-site well or sewage system? No. But you should have your well tested. If you're on well water, you should have your well tested annually. So you'll need to contact your local health department for sampling containers and directions on the sampling of your well. Does my equipment, which includes your stove or refrigerator, need to be NSF? An NSF is a Food Equipment Evaluation Group. Does it have to be NSF approved? As a cottage food operator, you would not be required to meet NSF standards for your equipment used to manufacture the cottage food product. Can I bake bread in a wood-fired oven? Yes, as long as the oven is in your home kitchen. When are cottage food products subject to sales tax? The best thing to do is contact your Department of Treasury
using a shared kitchen to produce your product. If your state doesn't offer a cottage food law, or you don't want to produce your recipe in your own home kitchen, the next step would be to use a shared kitchen. A shared kitchen is just as the name implies. You share a commercially licensed kitchen with other food entrepreneurs. A shared kitchen is a licensed facility where recipes not suitable for home kitchen production, potentially hazardous foods, are produced. A shared kitchen is the first step between a home kitchen and a fully licensed and large-scale commercial kitchen. The greatest benefit of a shared kitchen arrangement is these facilities usually have state-of-the-art cooking equipment that you're able to use for a very nominal fee. And unlike home kitchens, you have the ability for full production capability, distribution outlets, and business development options usually not available to home kitchens. In addition, you have the ability to conduct public cooking demonstrations and meet other food entrepreneurs that you can share knowledge and experience. Hire a co-packer to produce your recipe. A co-packer is a fully licensed kitchen that you can hire to produce your recipe to your specifications. A co-packer frees you up from the actual production of your recipe so you can focus on getting your recipe out into the world. You simply pay the co-packer a per jar fee plus any additional setup fees, and they will produce, box up, and pallet your finished product. In essence, a co-packer provides a complete turnkey experience. Here's a brief overview of some of the advantages and disadvantages of working with a co-packer. Advantages of working with a co-packer: low startup costs as compared to buying equipment and building a facility. Knowledgeable co-packers can assist in product development, food safety testing, shelf life studies, and more. A co-packer may have similar products, thus reducing your production time and saving you money. They're already familiar with good manufacturing processes, hazard analysis, and critical control points. Regulatory and certificates that are required to produce food. Co-packers have the ability to produce and maintain inventory on raw materials, space to store your finished product, and may even be able to provide fulfillment capability to your retailers and distributors. Provide assistance with label design, provide contact information for food brokers, and more. Disadvantages of working with a co-packer. Working with a co-packer can also have its disadvantages. Here are some of the areas you should be familiar with when working with a co-packer. First, you should sign a non-disclosure, non-compete, confidential agreement which outlines and includes your formulations and recipes. Thus, when working with a co-packer, you should consider having a non-disclosure, non-compete form signed prior to disclosing any confidential information about your business or your recipes. The second disadvantage, you give up all control of the production process and production schedule. This means your co-packer has complete control of when your final product will be delivered. And if they have a pushback in their production, which basically means if they quote you 4 weeks from the time you place a purchase order until they deliver you finished product, and for whatever reason they don't deliver until 6 weeks, that's a production issue that you have to deal with. So always have a close relationship with your co-packer and have a good understanding about their production process and the production time. The next disadvantage, the co-packer may already be producing a similar product to yours, thus creating a conflict of interest between your company and the co-packer. And that's why it is vital to have them sign a confidential, non-compete agreement prior to disclosing any of your recipes. Another disadvantage, if the co-packer gets into financial trouble, you will need to know if their financial troubles can potentially place a lien against your finished products prior to it being delivered to you. And the way to answer this question is simply sit down with the owners of the co-pack company that you're interested in dealing with and ask them the question, what happens if you get into financial trouble? Will your creditors lien my finished product before I take delivery? Let me share with you a real-life story on how vital it is to have a non-compete, non-disclosure form signed prior to disclosing any information about your business or your recipes with a co-packer. And this story comes from one of my clients in my food consulting business. And this happened prior to this individual working with my company. And for the sake of this story, I'm going to use Melissa for our example. Melissa had a recipe that her grandmother created decades before that was passed down to her mom and now to her. And Melissa ultimately decided to take this multi-generational recipe to market. She interviewed 2 or 3 co-packers in her local area and ultimately decided on a final co-packer. They came to an agreement. She made a 50% down payment to the co-packer, and the co-packer in return agreed to deliver 50 cases of this multi-generational family recipe. In about 6 weeks, Melissa picked up her first 50 cases of her order. It was an extreme hit. We had stores in her local town that wanted it, distributors wanted it, everyone was clamoring over her new recipe. In addition, she was also written up in local newspapers, and on the evening news, they actually interviewed her about the creation of her product because this recipe was a hit. Melissa placed her second order with this particular co-packer, but instead of 50 cases, she placed an order for 100 cases. That was an extreme hit as well. Stores were still clamoring for her product, and they couldn't get it fast enough. Melissa went in and placed her third order, and this all happened within about a 3 to 4 month period, so she had a hot recipe. But what happened was, during this time, for whatever reason, the co-packer decided to basically steal her recipe. When she went in to pick up her third order of the recipe that she paid the co-packer for, she also found on their loading dock not only her pallet waiting to be picked up, but pallets of product with the co-packer's label on it, as well as other labels on it from other companies that the co-packer co-packed product for. So again, the co-packer stole her recipe not only for their own brand, but also stole her recipe to sell to the other clients that the co-packer created product for. Melissa did not receive 1 penny for this. I wanted to share that story with you because it's vital to have a non-compete, non-disclosure form signed prior to disclosing any information about your recipe or your business with a potential co-pack partner. Private label another company's recipes. Private label is when a product is manufactured by one company so another company can put their brand name or label on the finished product. Private label products are also known as private label brands, store brands, and private label goods. For instance, the next time you're in the breakfast cereal aisle of your favorite grocery store, read all of the names on the cereal boxes. You'll probably find several different types of cereal with the name of the grocery store on the outside of the box. The finished product you are seeing on the shelf is usually manufactured by another company, but the grocery store has private labeled the product. In addition to offering many of the same benefits of a co-packer, here are some of the additional benefits a private label kitchen can provide. Number 1, add additional products fast. Since you're not making the product, you don't have to worry about sourcing the raw material or retooling your production line. You simply find a company with a recipe that you like, and then you can add the new product to your current line, usually within weeks. Next, you start with an idea. There are a number of private label companies that offer a whole range of products you can build a company around in almost any niche. So if you have an idea for a food company that, for example, wants to specialize in offering jams and jellies, you can find a private label company with a whole range of jams and jellies that you can build your company around. So you can start your company simply with an idea and then find products that you can sell under your brand name. Start with only one recipe. If you only have one recipe, you can go out and find complementary products and offer a complete line of products under your brand. For example, let's say your flagship recipe product is cherry jam, and you want to offer strawberry, blueberry, raspberry, as well as peach and pineapple jam, for example, but you haven't perfected the recipes. What you can do is launch your company with the flagship product of the cherry jam and go out and find a private label kitchen that will create a strawberry, a raspberry, a pineapple, and a peach jam so you can build out your line fast. So what this allows you to do is start your company with the one recipe, your flagship recipe, and then build out with the other products so you have a wider selection for your customers to choose from. Private label kitchens are fully licensed commercial kitchens. For example, if you are making your flagship product out of your home kitchen, the only distribution opportunity that you have is direct to the consumer at street fairs and festivals. If you offer private label brands under your own brand by a private label kitchen, those recipes are produced in a commercially licensed kitchen, which means you can take those recipes that are private labeled and contact distributors and contact stores to introduce your brand to the local stores and distributors in your area. So it will allow you to leverage your brand, get it into stores, as well as sell on the internet and direct mail. And then as you build your cottage food recipe, you can increase the volume of your cottage food recipe, hire a co-pack kitchen to make that, and then all of your recipes are made in a commercial kitchen. But most importantly is the private label recipes that you are purchasing are made in a commercial kitchen, which opens a whole range of distribution options for you over and above the cottage food laws. The main benefit of private labeling recipes, it allows you to focus exclusively on growing your company and building your brand. While the greatest disadvantage is the recipes aren't your own. You're simply placing your label on another company's recipes.